Welcome back to the annual Celebrity Pen and Paper Role-Playing Event of the Year, hosted by the Roleplay Geeks podcast. We are here on the red carpet, waiting for our next celebrity to arrive. From the A-list to the D-list, all the way down to Ryan Reynolds, we have all of your favorite celebrities. And the question on everyone's mind this year is, what characters will each of these stars play when they sit down to the respective gaming tables? We have already heard from household names like Christopher Walken, who will be playing a furry little mouse this year.
You have to get inside their mind. You have to know what they want, need. You have to think like a mouse. If you can do that, if you can think like a mouse, then boom.
We were even able to sit down with Mr. William Shatner, a man who's always looking for a new challenge.
I'm not a Starfleet commander or T.J. Hooker.
I'm William Shatner, and I'm a shaman.
And even the president of these United States will be attending, and we understand he will be playing a really super duper smart robot man. He had this to say earlier this evening.
Being very large brain.
Bing bing bong, 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 bing bing bing.
Bing, bing, bing.
Bing, that's the end of that.
Even our favorite unidimensional big screen heroes did not disappoint, sticking to what they know best, like Bruce Willis,
A cop.
and Sylvester Stallone,
Because I'm a fighter.
and finally Arnold Schwarzenegger.
Of course, I'm a Terminator.
And now for the moment we all have been waiting for, the greatest living actor, the legend himself. I'm so nervous I'm shaking. What will he play? Who will he be? Will he reveal the amazing role he has in store for us tonight? Mr. DeVito, over here. The world is on the edge of their collective seats. They are all dying to know what the great and breathtaking Danny DeVito will be playing at this year's event.
My character, I'm the trash man. I come out, I throw trash all over the ring, and then I start eating garbage. And then I pick up the trash can and I trash the guy.
And there you have it. Danny DeVito is the Trash Man. And that's all we have from the red carpet this evening. It's time for folks at home to grab their dice packs and cheese balls as we go inside and get this show started.
Hello and welcome to Roleplay Geeks. I'm your host, Frank.
I'm your token hippie, John.
Yep, I'm here. Jim, I'm here.
And this is Steve-O, a.k.a. the other Steve. The original Steve is not with us today. Steve-Un.
Well, technically, chronologically, you would be the original Steve.
Well, he was the first Steve on the podcast. So
That's true. On the podcast, it's perspective. It's all perspective is what decides how it is.
Subjective.
But, yeah. So this week, we're going to talk some just general stuff. We're just going to wrap a little bit. Nothing specific on the agenda. We have a few news items. We have a few things to kick around for funsies. Jimmy, I think you had a news item. Why don't you kick us off?
Top.
You need to use push to talk, buddy.
And that's what it sounds like when Jimmy's mic's muted.
He told us about some really cool stuff, everybody.
I'm still getting used to the push to talk thing. All right, so back to being serious. I'm serious. So, I found
Yahoo!
So I found this new virtual tabletop. It's called Owlbear Radio. Radio? No, Owlbear Rodeo. And it's just owlbear.rodeo. Put it in your browser. Go there. You don't have to have a login or anything. You just enter a password if you want to. It sets up a room for you. It gives you a shareable link so your friends can join in. And it's like a really simplistic form of Roll20 or Fantasy Grounds. It doesn't have all the bells and whistles, but if you want to do a really quick tabletop combat, it's perfect for that. You can load maps and tokens from your local drive, and it has some built-in.
Does it have a whiteboard
and token? Yes.
Oh my
That's
gosh,
why
that's
I'm
perfect for
bringing
you.
it up, because it actually has a whiteboard that doesn't suck 100%. It sucks about 20%. 80% of it's really good, very usable, I think. Way more so than Fantasy Grounds, which doesn't have a whiteboard at all, nothing to speak of, and Roll20, which has an infuriating whiteboard that doesn't ever do anything you want it to do easily, if at all.
Look for the coming ebook from Jimmy. Whiteboards that don't suck and why.
Okay. Have you? Have you tried this thing out?
I have. Yes, I love it. The controls, there are a few controls that are a little confusing, like deleting tokens took me a second. There's no manual that I could find. There might be one out there. There's a YouTube channel dedicated to it where they keep you updated. It's in beta now, but it's incredibly usable.
Can you block users from drawing on the whiteboard for people who like to doodle randomly while you're trying to run a game? Not that I'm thinking about anybody specifically that's name starts with a J and ends with Emmy. But I'm just curious.
So I didn't see any controls, and I wasn't looking for them because, I like to doodle. But yeah, that's the thing I have.
So does it work with like any game system, or is it, I mean, do you like load a set of rules like you would in Roll20 or Fantasy Grounds, or is it just sort of like literally a game space?
It's just a tabletop. There are no rule sets. They do have a dice tray with a full set of die, D20 all the way down to D100. It has some presets for the type of dice, like the aesthetics of them. It's a 3D dice roller. It has the tokens off to the right-hand side. I think it has, probably like 20 or 30 tokens built in, and then you can create your own using, something off of the web. We use a token creator to put ours together. You can go on the web, create your own tokens, download them to your machine, and then upload them from there. Same thing with the maps. You can create maps or download maps to your local hard drive and then upload them on the fly, which is pretty nice.
So what does, say, Roll20 have, other than maybe dynamic lighting, that this, what's it called again?
Owlbear Rodeo.
So what are some of the things it doesn't have that say Roll20 has? And we know Fantasy Grounds has quite a bit, so where it does the combat tables and everything for you.
Yeah, if you wanted to compare it to Roll20, Roll20 is a little bit more open-ended because it has the ability to code plugins and expansions to the software base. So you can add things like character sheets, rule sets. They have support for cards in Roll20. I didn't see anything like that for the Owlbear platform. It's basically, Owlbear is all of the core functions of doing tabletop combat with none of the bells and whistles. It does have Fog of War, though. It does not have dynamic lighting, and they're only in beta. It's free. You don't have to sign up for anything. It's really quick to log on. So I'm thinking about using it as a supplemental to Roll20 in cases where I need to really quickly
doodle. In cases where you want to doodle. That's why you want it.
Yes. In cases where I want to doodle and I need to create a map quickly using doodling, because Roll20 sucks at that.
All right, so where can you find this thing?
You just log on to, you open any browser and just type in owlbear.rodeo.
Well, we'll check it out for sure. So, since I seem to be the designated horror guy, there's a new product that's going to be available soon. They just had a Kickstarter, and it's called Dreadful Realms, Caverns of the Wise Minister. And it is a dark fantasy setting for 5th edition Dungeons and Dragons. And they recently launched a Kickstarter. I think they were trying to only raise about $2,600, and they did that in about 4 hours. And I just checked it, and they have over $23,000 now. So it looks like it's pretty reasonable that this product will come out. What they say this is going to have The realm is supposed to be between life and death, some kind of in between. And the citizens of the Sepulchre, which is the name of the city, are the descendants of people who got trapped between light and dark. And apparently, your characters are supposed to be heroes or whatever that were heading to the underworld to free some lost souls or something, and then you got stuck. They have 5 new playable races, 4 subclasses, and 5 new backgrounds, as well as monster spells, magic items, and equipment for this setting. And then I think they're going to do another book, planning to do another book of adventures that should be set for level 1 through 11. So sounds kind of interesting. And I remember, Frank, you had talked about, what was the old horror one setting that you said would always be neat to try for Dungeons and Dragons?
Oh, like Ravenloft.
Ravenloft, yeah. I mean, this might be kind of like that. I don't know. What's this sound like? Sound good to you guys or what?
Hey, who did you say was putting that out?
It's a company called... let's see, Dreadful Realm.
I'm not sure he did say.
Yeah, yeah, it's like a new company. I'm looking here. I'm on their website, on their Kickstarter page.
So, just out of curiosity, why do you ask that question, Jim?
Well, I'm just wondering if it's someone I've already heard of, so I have like some context or maybe some background to understand whether it's going to suck or whether it's going to be pretty good.
Oh, I don't know. There's supposed to have some veterans and stuff working on this that have previous game design experience. So I'm just kind of. I think it's just called. It's not a supplement. I think this is a brand new product from
a first time game company.
Dreadful Realms, I think, is going to be the name of this product. Yeah, that's my guess. So. I could be wrong.
We could put it on the list of something to try. We got to push it down the list because, I found some new stuff I want to talk about.
We got a lot of new stuff we want to do. So I don't know if I would necessarily be that interested in it. And there is a level 0 adventure you can download just to try it out. So
I'm just kind of curious, based upon what popped in my head when you were talking about this news item, is that it seems a rather, I guess the word I'm looking for is involved or detailed premise. So it's created a scenario and that you're supposed to play within that scenario. And I'm kind of curious, do you think that has a lot of legs, as they say? I mean, one of the things that's nice about a fantasy role-playing game, whether it be D&D or GURPS or whatever it may be, it's just the general, here's the rough setting, and it's left to the GM to, evolve it how they wish.
Well,
but if you start with a premise that's fairly tight, it seems like there's not enough room to evolve. Is all I'm trying to say.
Right. I think a lot of times when we talk about new games, I mean, there's 2 different things you're looking at. It's one is the game, the rules, and the other is the setting. And what really attracts, I think, most people, at least me, when I'm looking at new games or games is the setting. So if I can use a rule set that I'm already familiar with, but then it just adds a lot of stuff, or maybe doesn't allow some things, that the other one does, then, it may be worth it. But I see what you mean. It would be kind of limiting. I mean, as far as I can tell, everything happens in this city of Sepulchre. Again, I didn't read the whole thing, but it just says you play denizens of the city of Sepulchre, descendants of those plucked from homes from the surface, trying to forge a new life in the darkness of the underworld. And, that's kind of it, with new classes, subclasses, and backgrounds, and monster spells and magic items and equipment. So, yeah, I don't know. I'd probably rather try Ravenloft.
Yeah, so I was a little confused. So they get plucked from the surface?
Really? I'm shocked. That never happens.
Well, So he said they get stuck in the underworld, and then he said he got plucked from it. When he said they got stuck, I thought we were talking about Call of Cthulhu, and I was thinking about Steven's Geo Metro, and we're stuck in the underworld. And then when he talked further, I'm like, okay, it's not Call of Cthulhu, it's something else because I was spacing out. And then now he's saying they're plucked, so they're plucked from the surface in their Geo Metro.
So just to be clear, this realm is between life and death. So you're in between the world of the living and the underworld, I guess. You're in some kind of limbo, I suppose.
Yeah.
I don't know. A lot of people apparently think it's going to be a cool idea. They got funded very fast, so very quickly. So
we should create our own game.
Mm-hmm. Well, game setting, right? I mean, that's pretty much what we do when we play Traveler. You and I both never use Spinward Marches or any of the supplements. We create our own universe. I mean, we've done that.
If only we knew somebody who had invented a set of rules. If we only knew someone.
Right.
I can't think of anyone who.
Somebody, man, really.
Yeah, I know. Really, you can't find anyone that is on this podcast that has invented their own rules.
Right. I mean, we could certainly put together a game between the four of us, but I don't know. Just seems like it would be a big undertaking, I think, to get it all put together.
Nah.
20
okay,
minutes
Jimmy,
top.
that can be your next project.
My understanding is essentially you make a Kickstarter and then profit. I mean, nearest I can work out, that's essentially how it works. And you have like goals, and goal 1 would be write some rules, and the rule 2 would be write some rules that follow from rule 1.
It's that old South Park thing: collect underpants. Step 2, step 3, get profit.
So
all right,
just
what
use
else we got?
underpants.
Okay, so there's another role-playing game that is interesting in a way. It's called Blackbirds, and it is a new game that's come out, and it's being endorsed by, and I cannot say this man's name, and I'm going to butcher it terribly, but it's the actor who's famous for playing Dungeons and Dragons with other actors. Joe. He's been in a lot of TV shows and movies. He's an action.
Oh yeah, Joe.
guy. Manganiello, I think is how you might say his name. I cannot say his name, and I apologize. Should he ever listen to this?
Is that French?
No. So he's endorsed actually Blackbirds, and he wrote in a tweet, "If you like your fantasy like I like my morning coffee with a gauntleted uppercut to the jaw, you'll love this world and you'll love this system. I grew up loving Warhammer / grim dark fantasy, and this is the spiritual successor. You are in good hands here, people." And
I don't want to have a cup of coffee with him. I'm just saying.
Well, I was intrigued by it because, grimdark is all the rage now because of, Game of Thrones and all that sort of stuff like that. So it's a natural thing for people to do. And it's interesting. I'll probably look into it just for us to kick around at some point. But I'm curious. Celebrity endorsements are something that is very common in a lot of different hobbies and a lot of different industries. And this is not an area that, role-playing games don't typically have a lot of celebrity endorsements. And so this is one of the few celebrity endorsements
There's 3.
Yeah.
Jim Diesel, Jim McNeil, whatever his name is, and what's her face, the redheaded gal. That's
of course. Patton Oswalt.
Oh, and also, I guess, Wesley.
True. That's true. Wesley Crusher endorsed.
Yeah.
But I'm just kind of curious. I mean, what do you guys think about this celebrity endorsement part of role playing?
I don't like it. It's weird. I don't like it.
Yes, it is wrong, because if you're going to have a celebrity endorsement for role playing, it sort of messes it up for me when it's beautiful looking people endorsing these things. I always anticipate it should be somebody with the body of Danny DeVito and the head of Sheldon from Big Bang Theory. And it's just wrong. I don't like it.
So you think Will Wheaton's good looking, do you?
Well, he's not Danny DeVito with Sheldon's head.
Well, it's just a little odd. He's kind of an interesting Joe is an interesting guy because he's got a set game that he runs in his basement, and he's got all these actors that play on it. And I don't know if they've ever recorded. They may have recorded. I've seen some video footage here and there, but what's the name of the guy? I'm blanking on his name. The actor who's really, really tall. He was in Swingers, and he was in the remake of. I'm blanking on his name completely. But Vince Vaughn. Vince Vaughn's one of the guys who plays in it, and there's a number of actors and Hollywood types that play in this game, and it's really odd to watch any sort of little bit of footage from it because there's all these famous people playing D&D like us.
I heard him interviewed. Will Wheaton was on one of the podcasts I listened to. It's called the Geek's Guide to the Galaxy, and he usually interviews science fiction authors and things like that. And but he was on there one time talking about it. I'm not sure if he still does that show, but it seems like and this may have been as much as a year ago that I was listening to it. But yeah, apparently once it got going, Will Wheaton said actually celebrities would reach out to him and say, "Hey, can I be on your show?" Once they got wind of it, and turns out, they play D&D or game or whatever. So, I don't know. I couldn't care less if a celebrity endorsed a game or not. I don't know that it would matter to me.
Yes. Like I said, this is just a weird thing that's happening now because we realize more celebrities do play, and certainly all these companies, if a sports celebrity endorses, a bat or a sports drink. I don't know sports. I don't know anything about it. But if they endorsed it, clearly that has some positive impact on sales of that product because companies wouldn't continue to pay a lot of money to, all these sports stars to do that. So I am kind of curious if this industry is seeing a similar thing, that as these people endorse it, that it has a major uptick in their sales of the product. And like you, my gut says, nah, it doesn't matter, but maybe, I don't know.
Well, so like the one thing is like with like sports figures, celebrities, if you will, if they do something like Nike or, like shoes or energy drinks or whatever, that kind of makes sense. That's kind of in their wheelhouse. This is almost something like the way I kind of look at celebrities who have political opinions. My attitude is they don't really know anything more than anyone else. In fact, a lot of times my impression has been a lot of actors, actresses, people that are celebrities know a lot less. They've just been kind of pulled into the realm by other people and might be, I don't want to say used as pawns, but something kind of along those lines. So I don't know if that I can sit there and say that I would look at someone and go, oh, wow, man, like Will Wheaton, for example. I don't know if I'd go, wow, I really respect his opinion about gaming supplies. I mean, I know he does a lot of stuff with it now, but I don't know if I could sit there and go, wow, that's just, wow, he really knows this. I mean, he is kind of geeky and stuff, and he's been doing this stuff for a while. So he's gotten into it more to actually have some, let's call it street cred, which is really funny saying street cred around kind of, nerds. But that's, you might be able to sit there and say that
Screen
for
trade.
one or two of these people. But
screen cred.
Right. Well, there you
cred.
go. But, so a couple of these things, what is this? Joe Manganiello. So let's assume that's right.
I looked it up and listened to it, but now I've already forgotten what he said. It sounded like, I think it was Manganiello. Manganiello.
That's what I said. Yeah, Manganiello.
John's probably the most right.
Vanillo.
Joe Vanilla. So
Joe Vanilla.
The thing is, I don't know any. I mean, I know he's acted in a couple things, and I know a bunch of girls at my work. I'll talk about him like they're just, about to pass out, just talking about him and thinking about him. So, but that to me, that means nothing about. I don't know his credentials in terms of being a role player and all the stuff that he's done, and so that he knows stuff. So, yeah, that's one of those things. I guess it doesn't mean a whole lot to me, really. So.
Yeah, so I think the big thing about it is it makes it less stigmatized as being nerdy and crappy socially. So you've got these fancy looking, beautiful people talking about how awesome role playing is. It opens the door, I think, to people who otherwise would just not want to engage in it because of the stigma of it being only for smelly, fat, nerdy people.
So if you ever get a chance, check out his any YouTube walkthroughs or anything like that of his game room. It is epic.
Joe Vanilla.
His game room is just amazing, as you would expect to somebody who's fairly well off. And I don't think he has any children. So he's got money to burn on other things. And his wife, do you guys know who his wife is?
Yeah, she's the girl from Modern Family, something like that.
Yeah, so Sophia Viegra, I think is how you say his name, or her name. I'm sorry, but it's amazing the setup he has down there. Ironically enough, the nearest I can work out in his basement.
That's what it looks like. It used to be a wine cellar, and he changed it into a nerd cellar.
That's kind of awesome. In a way.
Wine cellar. I'm
sure
sure
that probably hurts you in your soul, but then you don't feel so bad about it, do you, Jimmy?
Oh,
so
no,
there's part of you that kind of,
in a
oh my God, oh wait, that's really kind of cool, but oh my God.
If I had to choose between wine and role play, it'd be role play.
Oh really? Okay.
You serious?
Yeah, I mean, if it were coffee and role play, it'd be coffee.
Oh, okay. I don't know, man, because you typically are drinking wine while we're role playing.
Well, there's also whiskey and scotch and beer, and there's alternatives.
You don't like any of those.
I could learn to love them if I didn't have wine.
Yeah. I've got another piece here. You guys know I love Chaosium, the makers of Call of Cthulhu and
Geometros.
Right, Geometros and RuneQuest. But so Call of Cthulhu, they've just released a new solo adventure. Now, this is kind of interesting. They have, it looks like 5 solo adventures. And when you download the quick start rules, you get one, and I think it's kind of a scaled down version of called Alone Against the Flames. But this one's called Alone Against the Tide. And I did play Alone Against the Flames, again, the one that came with the the quick start rule. And when I rolled my character up and I thought, hey, this will give me an opportunity to learn the combat system well, because it had been so long since I had done it. And since I'd played Call of Cthulhu. So my NPC, Sam Drake, the doctor, I had him go through the solo adventure. But really, it's kind of like a choose your own adventure. It says, if you decide to do this, go to page whatever, and then you go there and see what the results are. Or sometimes you have to roll dice, and it's like, if you succeed, go to this page. If you fail, do this. It's exactly like a choose your own adventure, other than sometimes you roll the dice. It's kind of odd playing them, but again, they have 4 or 5 of these. Now, I think I texted you guys earlier this morning. Fantasy Grounds has 25% off, at least this weekend. I don't know if it's for Black Friday or whatever. So I went ahead and downloaded Alone Against the Dark for Fantasy Grounds. And I'm going to try it because I'm still thinking about, I bought a bunch of modules and the rule set and everything for Fantasy Grounds to try and continue our Call of Cthulhu campaign. So I'm going to try this solo adventure and just see. I have no idea how to work with Fantasy Grounds, but I'll let you know. But I bought it this morning and haven't loaded it or anything, but I'm going to give it a try. So hopefully I can learn how to use Fantasy Grounds maybe while I'm running this solo adventure. So when we all get together in a few weeks, I'm not stumbling around too bad. But what do you guys think about running solo? Have you guys ever done solo adventures yourself? Have you ever tried them?
Just a choose your own adventure, Bug.
Mm-hmm.
It was something I was really fascinated with when I was 14. and there just wasn't that many people to play with. And at the time, I didn't have mobility really, and the only people I played with were John and Steven, and they lived on the other side of town. So getting there to play was very, very difficult. So,
Are you saying you came from the wrong side of town?
I'm not saying.
Yes, he
actually,
He did.
Actually, I did not, because.
Or are you saying they're from the wrong side of town?
Neither. It's again, for me at 14, it was the other side of town. It's not truly the other side of town. Jimmy came from the actual wrong side of town.
I came from the other side of the tracks.
Right. So the place that we grew up in, that everybody except for Steve-O grew up in, literally has a right side and a wrong side of the tracks. It's almost cliche. It's kind of funny. And the two areas of town that John and Steven and I lived in were fairly separated from each other, but both on the right side of the tracks.
Did Jimmy even live in town? That wasn't considered town, was it? Way up there on the hill there?
No, it wasn't in town. It was just outside of the city limits.
Yeah.
About a mile and a half outside the city limits, but it was still on the wrong side of the tracks. It's where all the poor people live.
It's where all the cool kids hung out.
That explains all like the chemical waste. Yeah.
Yeah. We had our own Call of Cthulhu adventure going on up in the hills.
Or Game of World.
So yeah, actually, I could talk a lot about this from a geographer standpoint of the idea of place and the idea of delineated space. So you asked, did Jimmy come from the wrong side did actually even come from town? And you're talking about the city boundary versus conceptual boundary. And I think most people would consider the area that Jimmy grew up in as part of town, even though legally it isn't part of town. It's kind of one of those interesting dichotomies that happen within human beings. We have a legal delineation and a conceptual delineation. So for example, you're from Princeton, but you're not. You're close enough that you may be aligned with it psychologically or philosophically, but you wouldn't be from a legal standpoint.
So I appreciate you kind of making up for Steven not being on the show today.
The only thing I have to say about the choose your own adventure stuff, it's as I'm with Frank on this. Choose your own adventure was the only sort of self-play adventure thing I ever did, and hey, the wife just came home. And the big disappointment for me was every once in a while, more often than not, you would go and turn to a page that you would much rather, instead of seeing the outcome of that page turn, you'd rather see something that would say like, I went ahead and put myself into Alcoholic Anonymous rehab facility, or still waiting for publisher's advance because it was so terrible, the outcome. I don't know who wrote those things, but for the most part, they sucked.
So I remember when I was running for myself before we started Call of Cthulhu, and again, it was Alone Against the Flames, and I think there's a full version of it because I'm looking at it right now, and I mean, to purchase it, the PDF's on sale for $4.99. Actually, I think that's the print version. I'm not sure. I think it's a shortened version of it, of what you get, but maybe not. But the thing I found kind of frustrating was, at least in this adventure, almost every wrong choice ended up with you dead. I mean, and it wasn't just a setback. I mean, it almost every time was, you're trying to climb down a cliff on a wall, make a dex roll, and it's like you make your dex roll. Okay, if you don't make it, turn to this page, and it's like you fall off the cliff and you're dead. Game over. It's like you gotta start all over. And I mean, it was like there was another one where it's like you have to try and like move stealthily and try and get inside a library and make a couple decisions there. And it's like if you don't do something just right, it's like you get captured by the villagers that you're trying to, the cult villagers that you're trying to evade. I mean that was the frustrating thing for me. So you end up going back all the time, and then the very end of it was pretty hard. It was basically one choice you could make to make it out alive. So, and I mean, I guess maybe they made it that way because it is a solo adventure, but I don't know. And it had to be short, right? I mean, how many choices can you have? How many results can you have really realistically, as opposed to when you're really playing a role-playing game and the DM can come up with all kinds of alternatives if you don't make your dex roll, without outright killing you, But I'm anxious to try the one Alone Against the Dark with Roll20. I mean, not Roll20, but Fantasy Grounds, just to see how it plays out. I'm kind of curious about that.
So here's a question for the assembled crowd. I think that leads to something I kind of we've been thinking about this week. Is what is, and there's no clear answer here, I don't think, but what is the optimal and the converse of that? What is a terrible number of people to play with? It's because I was thinking about, single adventures. It's not great because you're like we've detailed here, you're limited to whatever it is the writer came up with for a particular scenario.
Unless you have multiple personality disorder.
But let's just we'll take that exception out of the equation. And I thought of when we were younger, John and I ran a few of just him and I. And it was so much more fun for me when Steven got involved, not just because it was Steven, just it was another voice there. And then I was thinking of an adventure I ran in, I don't know, early 90s. They had like 8 or 9 people in it for whatever reason. And it was awful because it was just too many people. So I was thinking, where is that sweet spot, as it were?
I know for me, I like having 2 to 3 players, not me counted. I think 2 players are often really great because they can bounce ideas off each other. That third player is often the tiebreaker, when it comes to what you're going to do. 4's okay, but once you start getting up to 5 and above, it becomes, there's just so much waiting for everyone to get done. I mean, a good example is our current Dungeons and Dragons campaign where we have 5 players. It just takes a long time to get back around to you. And as a game master, and I'm doing Call of Cthulhu right now with 6 players because Jack's playing with us, and I'd make 5 players. And then we asked Andrew if he wanted to join, so that's going to be 6 players for Call of Cthulhu, which that's such an intimate game that it's going to be. I don't know. I'm still working out how I'm going to organize everything, because one thing I like doing with all of you is doing what I call solo sessions, where I sit down with John, for instance, and just me and him, kind of go over some things and do a little bit of it adventuring and because you have to, I think for horror you have to have kind of an intimate inner feeling about everything, And I think that helps when we do solo sessions. And then when we all get together as a group, everybody has those motivations and remembers those things. And I think that worked really well in the last go around. I am concerned about the size of this group, but I'm not going to turn anybody away that wants to play. So I'll just do the best I can to keep it organized and make sure everyone's having fun.
What do you think, John?
So I guess it's actually pretty similar to Steve's. I remember, trying to do some not really large ones, but a couple times when we've had larger groups, and I just noticed it just feels like it's chaos at that point. So I kind of like the total group sitting around the table, GM included, 4 or 5, I think. Probably even, as I said, 3 worked really well for us for a long time when we were younger, you, me, and Steven. And then it really wasn't too long before we added in Jimmy. And that always worked out really well. So I think 4 to 5 for the whole group, or 3 to 4 players, I think is kind of like the optimal number. I think you really get over that, it just starts kind of, like Steve-O was talking about, you end up having an issue where there's, you're really waiting. Okay, all right, so go ahead and attack, and they do their stuff, and you just attack them like, okay, I've got a couple minutes to sit. Well, let's just browse the web or look at my phone or, whatever. You start doing other stuff. So I think yeah, that's about where it gets to.
Yeah. So 3 is my optimal situation, with 4 being still pretty good,
Are you
depending
talking
on
3
who that
players?
4th person. What?
Are you saying 3 players or 3 total?
Yeah, 3 players. 3 players, and then and I'm looking at it from a game master's perspective. From a player perspective, I think it's probably still the same: 3 players, 1 game master, or 4 players, 1 game master. It depends on the people too, and I guess it doesn't depend on the people because I play with the same people all the time. We did do this live play though, where we had, how many people did we have? 5? Yeah, we had 5 people in that.
4 players. Yeah.
No, we had 5 players, right? We had Steven, you, and me, and then Tracy.
Oh, yeah, right.
Jamie.
Yeah, we had 5. Yeah.
Right. So, and that was really good. Well done. Hank.
Steve was so quiet and he held his action so much, I always forget he's there.
In every game. But I saw something that was absolutely awesome. So my son Jack is an avid player, plays all the time. Right now he's playing at night doing a Call of Cthulhu adventure. But when he was in the Scouts, he's aged out now, we went on this weekend trip up to a cabin, and there was like, I want to say all the Scouts wanted to play. And
was it a cabin in the woods?
10 to 15 Scouts that Jack was game mastering. And I was like, how are you going to do that, son? He says, oh, just set in and watch. So in the first 5 minutes of the game, it was a bloodbath. He just had these like impossible rolls you had to make, and it was just so he could weed out as many of them as he can. So he weeded out all the stupid guys who were doing dumb things.
There you go.
And then at the end of the day, he had, 5-10 minutes in, he had 5 players.
So I was thinking about this, D&D, of course, being the benchmark for most things in some level. And if you think about it, D&D has 4 main roles, which is, fighter, magic user, cleric, thief. And if you don't have any one of those roles, it can be a bit challenging to deal with most adventures most of the time. So really it's set up for 4 players, ideally. But, if you think of something like Traveler Drink, it doesn't necessarily have that sort of setup. Like you don't have 4 defined roles that you have to fill. You can get away with everyone being the same background at some level or whatever it may be. And my sense is that you get a similar thing with Call of Cthulhu. I could be wrong. Steve knows the rules better than I do, but what I'm getting is that all these other systems don't seem to require that sort of 4 role section. What do you guys think?
Well, with Traveler and Call of Cthulhu, those are really skill heavy games, skill based games. I mean, I know there's skills in Dungeons and Dragons, but the best thing to do is to of course create your group together. One pet peeve I've always had about Traveler is you basically roll up either Navy type characters that are really good about everything on the ship, the pilot, the engineer, the gunner, and those are only skills you can get in a Navy occupation, prior occupation. And then you have the other side of it, the Marines and the Army, where those guys are really good at gun combat and armor and all the stuff that happens when you're on the planet. So they've gotten better. The 2nd edition Mongoose actually has like a pool of skills that you can, pull from, that it's like, if you're going to do this type of exploratory mission or whatever kind of mission, you need these core skills. You got to split them up among the group. And I like that. That's a nice addition to it. Call of Cthulhu, probably not as necessary. It's just good to have a nice, well-rounded group that everybody has useful skills, and it's not just combat skills, but investigative skills are probably the most important. Charm, fast talk, things like that as well. There's a lot more role-playing than combat, I would say, in Call of Cthulhu. But yeah, that's my take on those 2 games anyway.
And so the other thought I had about this, which is I did them in reverse order, but I wanted to remember the first one. That's why I did it, which is something I always thought would be a lot of fun or just awful. I don't know which, is having a massive game with a lot of players, like a dozen players, but you would have, 2 GMs, and they would, it would be this kind of epic level thing, like a massive battle or something like that. And you would have these two GMs that would work together and sort of divide up the 10 players in two groups of 5, and the two groups of 5 would coordinate somewhat, but not at the sort of meta level, if I'm making sense. I just thought that would be a lot of fun and really, really hard to pull off in some form or fashion, but it'd be really cool if you could nail it.
That's sort of like having two Obids in the Community episode where he split them into 2 different rooms and ran them in 2 different areas of the world. Yeah. I think that'd be hard, but it'd be fun.
I don't know about 2 game masters, but something I've been actually thinking about, because I am a little bit concerned with, again, the size of this group that we're going to have going forward in Call of Cthulhu. I have actually thought, wouldn't it be neat to have 2 different groups? And, what if you split your large group into some smaller clusters and actually ran those games on different nights? And then maybe this group's investigating a certain thing and the other group's investigating a certain thing or pursuing something or whatever. And then maybe occasionally, or for the finale, you get the whole group together, for a big climax or something.
Ooh, you should do that.
I mean, I was thinking about that because I do these solo things anyway and do little breakouts every time I feel like an individual needs to do something outside the group. I prefer that as to everybody sitting around waiting for, him to get done with his thing so the rest of you can play. I've thought about like maybe if like John and Jimmy, for instance, maybe need to team up and do something, then we choose to do that on a different night and the rest of the group do something else. But then maybe next week, Frank and Jimmy team up to do something. And, I don't know. It would be a lot of gaming. I mean, but I'm good with that. I know when we played Call of Cthulhu before, I was calling you guys like every other night. We were really playing a lot when we had that campaign going on. So I don't know. What do you guys think about that?
I want to be in the group with the Toyota so that I get to see more than one location. So yeah, I think it's awesome. You should do it.
I mean, I think it'd be really kind of neat and stuff. I guess the attitude I have about it was when we did play last, it seems that the rules, or at least the way we're not playing like, tactical in fantasy grounds. And so doing our theater of the mind usually goes really fast. So combats aren't really that sluggish. And you were able to really quickly kind of go between us. I didn't feel any sluggish or felt like, well, let's see, I'll check my phone and look at the news and wonder what the weather's like tomorrow. I mean, I didn't do any of that and stuff when we played all together. And so I don't think it was that much of an issue. So I don't
That's
know.
because you mowed down a god with a machine gun in 2 rounds.
That's true.
Yeah, you were like, bam, over. I don't see the big deal.
While he was missed a sanity roll, it just he happened to roll the fight like a berserker kind of thing.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah, I went kind of nuts. And I was like,
Charged you with a machine gun and
I was basically I channeled John Rambo for 10 minutes.
Combat went really fast for me too. On the opposite end of the spectrum, I got shot and went down in round 1.
Well, that's the thing is that is really fast combat because it doesn't take much to put you down permanently. So,
that's right.
Yeah, it doesn't take prisoners.
And there's not a lot of options. I mean, if you think about Dungeons and Dragons, I mean, and we are playing it tactically, there's so many options. I want to cast this spell. We got to do saving throws and all that. None of that exists. I mean, again, chaos.
You could run away. You could hold your action. There's a lot of things you could do. There's a lot of different things you can do.
You can lay under your webbing.
Yeah, that's me. I'm just sitting around and webbing for turn after turn. Let me see if I can break free. No, not this round. Oh, but then it's you could claw or bite, and now I'm paralyzed. So
you could do death saving throws and more death saving throws and more death saving throws.
I haven't been going down lately, man. I'm getting a little better with the old cleric. I think. Of course, I'll say that, and I'll die this Wednesday. So.
You were kicking ass and taking names this last week.
Yeah, man, I've been learning how to use this character, really doing a lot of research. So just like you run away so you can rebuild those key points, man, that's important.
Yeah.
So Steve holds his action, but he's not here for us to make fun of him. So,
yeah.
He's getting a little sensitive about that, by the way, if y'all noticed.
Frank brings it up every 5 minutes and me every 3.
I think last week
only when you're in the room.
First round.
Hey, have it run away.
Have sanctuary and hold my action. Oh, man.
Okay, so Jimmy, I think you had another news item, right?
I did indeed. So the Alien role-playing game came out last December, I think. And
Is it based upon Alien or Aliens or Alien Resurrection or Alien Re-Alienating?
This is really cool. It is actually...
What about Alien versus Predator? Don't forget that.
So they've selected only 5 of the movies to include in the canon for the official role-playing game, which is put out by Free League. They ditched all of the Alien versus Predator movies, and they drop out Joss Whedon's Alien Resurrection. I guess Joss had something to do with the original script that got butchered and then later published.
Yeah, the thing that's really interesting about that movie, if you go back and watch it, and if you're a Joss Whedon fan, you can see this really easily, is you can see the echoes of the story he was telling that they destroyed. And when you watch that movie and you kind of watch it on fast forward through the like quote unquote scary parts that are terrible, you go, oh, I see the gem of the story here. It's not too terrible.
Yeah, right. So they just keep those other 5 movies, which is Prometheus, Covenant, Alien, Aliens, and Alien 3. And it takes place, I think, after Alien.
So there is basketball in this role-playing game, is what you're saying.
There is basketball, I guess. I don't know.
Well, that was an important plot point in Alien 3, the basketball.
I thought that was Alien Resurrection.
I don't know. I can't keep track of what was the...
Yeah, I just like Alien and Aliens myself. But anyway, they have 2 different types of play for the setting. One is campaign, so it's much broader. There's a lot of different factions involved, and you don't have to have an alien in every single game you play. And then they have the second style of play called cinematic play, and those are more like one-shots, and they encourage you to put the xenomorphs in that particular type of play. The fascinating thing about the system to me is it's the first time I've looked at this type of game mechanics, and I'd like John to check it out too.
Pardon us while we pause while Jimmy clicks on browser windows that he accidentally closed.
Yeah, exactly, because I'm doing push to talk and it's messing everything up. So it is based on...
Don't use your space bar as the key for push to talk, because it's what it's scrolling your thing, isn't it? And it's scrolling it. Yeah.
It is. So it's based on this game mechanics, the Year Zero dice system put out by Free League, which is the same publishing company that did the role-playing game. The system's really pretty neat, and it utilizes things like resources in the gameplay. So you have to roll from time to time to check to see if you have enough oxygen. And then if you don't, it's going to impact how effective you are at your rolls. It only has 4 attributes and then 3 skills for each attribute. And those are based on the type of character that you pick to play. And I think you can expand those skills out over time, but it really is a skill-based system, much like Cthulhu or Traveler, which is my jam. That's the kind of thing I think Steve-O and I both like. So I'm really interested in trying it out. I'm going to put it on our list. It's going to fall behind Blades in the Dark until we get through that one. I think we have OVA up after we finish Root. And then we have
Quest.
And then RuneQuest, and then Deadlands, and then Blades in the Dark, and then maybe we'll do Aliens after that. But
yeah, RuneQuest probably take 3 sessions just to roll up our characters. We'll talk more about that at the time, but I thought Traveler character creation was long and complex with background and stuff. This makes Traveler look like rolling up a D&D character.
So we will continue RuneQuest in 2022.
Yeah. So, and we'll get more into that in a few weeks once we get through OVA. Did you guys see where I uploaded everything there for the OVA?
Yeah.
Okay.
So what is it about Alien that you find so compelling as a gaming scenario? Because going back to the earlier thing that I was talking about with the limiting scope because of the cinematic universe, as it were, it feels like it would be really, really hard. And we've talked about this in the past about, things based upon movies or TV shows. It'd be really, really hard not to just make Alien or Aliens again as an adventure.
Yeah, for me, I'm not really interested in the setting, or I wasn't until I went to Seth Skordowski. We'll just call him Seth Vanilla. He's got a really good YouTube site, and he does a lot of stuff on Traveler, where he has a 9-part series breaking down Mongoose Traveler. He's doing the same thing for the Alien RPG, and does a really good job of breaking down. It was actually his breakdown of the game that made me go, hey, maybe I would like to play that. It could be a lot of fun, mostly for the game mechanics. I'm really excited about that Call of Cthulhu stress that I feel when I'm playing that game. This game seems to draw on that. You do have like pushing rolls, and that impacts your future rolls. You have cases where if you roll 2 6s, a 6 gives you a hit, so you succeed. If you have an additional 6, then that gives you what they call stunts, which allows you to pick from a table of 6 things. You either pick a roll, I'm not sure which, and that gives you bonuses for your next rolls, or allows you to do some additional feat during that encounter that makes it a little bit more epic. So those kinds of game mechanics I'm really interested in trying, because we grew up playing mainly those old school games like Traveler and Dungeons and Dragons. And as we get into these new gaming systems, like Root is similar in some way, to where it's less based on the role and more based on how you role play. And I'm interested in those kinds of game mechanics, and Alien seems to have that in abundance.
So I want to talk a little bit about the push a roll thing. I feel like, and if you look at our relative stock portfolios, it's probably true in general, but I feel like this group is, relatively speaking, risk adverse. I think if I had to take a drink every time Steve-O said, don't forget you can push a roll when we were playing Call of Cthulhu, I would have been too hammered to do anything. Because I don't think any of us did that when we were playing that game.
I'm pretty sure none of us did.
We're stuck in that 1970s game mechanic.
No, I think, John, I remember you pushing your roll more than anybody.
He did.
He did it one time, and it was after you were like, you can push a roll. Don't forget you push a roll. And you're like, oh, fine, I'll just push a roll. I mean, you really had to, pardon the pun, you had to push us to push a roll.
The only reason I did that is because it's sort of like using luck, which you guys, and that's an optional rule, which I chose to incorporate. But, because I want to make sure that rule's there, because it's not in most other games, to be able to roll twice. I mean, to try it again. It's a neat mechanic. You don't have to do it. You can approach the problem a different way, but it is there. You just have to remember that if you push the roll and you fail, then you're going to have, consequences.
Right.
And therein is the problem, I think, is because, sorry, I interrupted Jimmy. I'm sorry. But there is the problem for me, because you're like, you could push a roll. It's like, yeah, I could, but you could do this if you screw it up. Like, you know what? I'm just not going to take a risk. It's a risk adverse problem. I think that I personally go, I could screw up. I'd rather not run the risk of really screwing up and just normally screw up.
Yeah. I think it's not dissimilar to the things Andrew's doing with us when we do the tabletop combat for Dungeons and Dragons and Fantasy Grounds, where he is introducing those kind of game mechanics. It's all about what we're used to and what we've done in the past. And since we've picked up role-playing with gusto during the COVID crisis, we get exposed to these new gaming systems. So it's important for the game master to push us and show us that there are other game systems out there other than Traveler, the original classic Traveler, and the old Advanced Dungeons and Dragons. So I think it's not dissimilar and it's important that the game masters tell us these things. Like with Root, we're all experiencing that for the first time together, and we're stumbling through the rules and saying, oh, remember, you can do this. I think it's good. It's pretty cool stuff.
And I think some of it, though, is not to critique you too much, Steve-O, but some of this is presentation, because you'll say, and it's very natural. I think most people would present it this way. Hey, don't forget you can do this. I mean, that's something you could do. And this is the good thing can happen, of course. That could happen. And you in there. And it's like, oh, yeah, I know what I roll like, typically speaking. It's probably going to be the second thing, not the first thing. So I probably shouldn't do that. And I think it's interesting that we have these game mechanics that, and John may be able to speak to this a little bit as being a bit more of a game designer person than any of us. I get the philosophy of having a big win has a big negative too potential, but I am kind of curious from a game design sense, and I don't know any way you could find this out, is how much people are willing to engage that risk rewardness.
I kind of go with at least when I did it, it was one of those things. It was like, this is kind of a big deal going on right now. I'm going to go ahead and push it. I'm just going to push my luck and just run with it and see what happens and stuff. Because it, simply put, most of my gaming, I haven't had any characters die. And
it's awesome. You should try it.
Well, that's the thing. And so more recently, I just kind of like, what's the big deal? Actually, it's kind of fun to have this whole kind of just letting it go. I know it sounds kind of weird, but it just that's kind of my attitude on it. I was like, well, I'll just create another character and stuff, and maybe I'll kind of go, oh, well, I can put my skills towards this or whatever, maybe tune them a little bit better to how we're playing right now. And so I kind of got past that fear, I guess, of losing my character. And so I was like, oh, let's take the risk. And again, it was kind of a big deal. And I was like, well, it's now or never. And it might be a case that if I don't do this, we may not, win anyway. So, I guess the way I kind of looked at it is, if I don't do it, we're going to fail. But if I do it, we might win, but we could still fail. Just worse, but it's still a fail. So, no big deal. So that was kind of my attitude of how I looked at it. But I think having it there for players can be really fun. Again, we kind of go on about how we do the theater of the mind, and I like things to be more cinematic. And so I like to have that aspect of it, so that I want, when I'm playing, that if you do something amazing, you do, push it, and then you do something amazing and you kick butt, then it's awesome. But I'd also like it to be just as awesome if you fail. And I guess that's, that can be really a huge fun aspect to it as well.
Something that's been interesting to me in this is that I feel like Steven may have an advantage here over me specifically. I don't know about anyone else, because I feel like since he put so much thought into backgrounds, I wish he was here to verify this. I feel like he has a conceptualization of his characters as a story arc. And, you read a book and a character has an arc that begins at a point and they end at a point, and then the story's over. And that's that. And that's just natural. That's how storytelling works, right? But I get connected to my characters somewhat. And so I get scared a little bit to do these things and say, he could die, because I've not really thought through that character's arc. And I feel like that may be some of what limits me, is that if I would just embrace the fact that this character has an arc, and the arc can be here and in conceptualization there, and he did this amazing thing and it failed spectacularly and he died, that's okay. There's nothing wrong. That's a perfectly valid story. But what screwed me up the most was when we were playing Call of Cthulhu, Steve said, hey, I'm having fun with this. You guys want to continue? And everyone went, yeah, I want to continue. And I wanted to continue too. But then I was like, oh, I really care about my character now. Now I don't want to take as many chances. It's kind of weird.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I'm totally with what John's saying. I mean, and then as a game master, I mean, if somebody pushes the roll, then I have to come up with some creative way to make that failure, and decide what's fair, depending on what you're trying to do. Like it can be something simple with, the example given in the book is, you're trying to open a door and it's stuck. And then John says, "Hey, I want to push my roll." So I say, "Okay." You look over and there's a shovel, an old shovel laying there. And then, so he tries it again. If he makes his roll, then, he used leverage and opened the door. But if he fails his roll, then I would say, "Oh, the handle snapped and it stabbed you in the, in the arm. And now you lost a hit point," or something like that. I wouldn't make it too drastic. Or you broke it and now you can't get in it at all. Unless it's integral to the adventure to get through that door. You see what I mean? It's just, you got to, I'm not going to like kill somebody if they,
Well, now that I know that, I'll be pushing my roll every time now.
Well, that's what I mean. I'm not going to make it. It depends on what you're doing. Maybe if you're, climbing a mountain, a cliff or something like that, but you miss your climb roll, you're pretty much going to have to push it anyway. Right. So,
yeah, it's like straddling the game versus actually being an actor playing as as in depth as you can that character.
Mm-hmm.
So you want to be
Frank.
Yeah,
I feel like Frank's character's adverse to risk anyway. His character is not the player, but the character. He's a conservative.
Yeah, he is
college professor, so he's probably like, "No, I'm not going to do that. That looks dangerous." Whereas John's character, one of his traits that he rolled up is a risk taker. He does track days on his sport bike on the weekends. So
I try to embrace that, actually.
Yeah, exactly. So,
okay. So Steve-O, did you have another news item?
I had just one thing I wanted to mention. If you're a big D&D fan, which I know most people are, you guys have heard of Tosh's Cauldron of Everything.
Oh yeah,
right.
We mentioned it last week.
Yeah, and but one thing I wanted to mention, and I don't remember if we talked about it, but I pulled it up because Andrew, our DM, shared some stuff with us, some details and stuff. So I got a little more interested in what all's in the book itself. Extra subgroups of classes and all this kind of stuff. But anyway, interestingly enough, it is number 7 on Amazon's charts. And that is not games. That is all books. All books.
Holy crap.
Yeah. Yeah, no kidding. It's like number 1 is a book by Barack Obama. Matthew McConaughey's number 2, some, I guess, autobiography. Michelle Obama's book is number 3. And you get on down a little bit, Dolly Parton, Michael J. Fox is number 6, No Time Like the Future. And then Tosh's Cauldron of Everything, number 7. And then, 4 weeks on the list. That's nuts, man. I wouldn't doubt it would hit number 1 eventually,
One of my favorite things about that book that I have in there now that I feel was an important supplement for them to add, and I can't believe it took them this long, is they have a whole section in that book on puzzles.
Right.
For game masters, like how to construct puzzles and how to present puzzles and that sort of thing. And I love that part.
I have a book of puzzles. I think I showed it to you guys a few months ago on the podcast. It's a Dungeons and Dragons supplement that I bought years ago. Not as many years ago as when I first got into D&D, but maybe like 10 or 15 years ago, I ran across a hobby shop somewhere, and I always buy something. If I run across it, if I'm out of town, I run across a hobby shop. But it's a whole big book of puzzles and traps. So, but this thing looks really neat. I'm looking forward to diving into it, and I know we talked a lot about supplementing our existing characters using this, but on Amazon it is only $29.97 and the MSRP is $49.95. So that could be why it is number 7 on the charts. So I'm glad to see. It's been a nice thing, I think, recently, just how popular role-playing games are getting. It used to be such an obscure thing back when I started and through the years, but now, a lot of people do it, it's great. I love it.
Like famous celebrities, in case we didn't mention that earlier.
Like Will Wheaton, right?
Like Danny DeVito.
Does Danny DeVito role play?
I don't know if he role plays, but I wouldn't be surprised because Danny DeVito is awesome.
I think Vin Diesel does. It seems
Vin
like
Diesel does.
Yeah.
Dame Judi Dench. Dame Judi Dench plays as well.
Vin Diesel wrote the intro to one of the new Game Master books, either the Dungeon Master's book or the Player's Handbook.
Pretty cool.
Stephen Colbert, another famous player.
Yep.
Oh,
yep.
yeah.
I didn't know
you
he
can see
played.
him and go, wow, he's a super geek.
Yeah, I mean, he's a Rush fan, so D&D and Rush kind of go together.
I'm a
big
Lord of
Rush
the Rings
fan too, so
it's the encyclopedic knowledge of Lord of the Rings that makes him the most geekiest.
yeah.
Oh, I'm sure. Yeah.
And a little creepy.
Speaking of like the Adam Driver thing.
What?
No, that's John Oliver.
Oh, that's right. Yes.
John Oliver. So, any other news items we want to cover this week?
I think that covers everything I brought to the table.
Ditto.
Okay, how long have we been yapping? I don't know. I haven't been keeping
Over
track.
an hour, a little over an hour.
Okay, so anything else we want to talk about this week? I had another little mini topic, but we could blow it off for now.
Well, I just want to remind everyone, which we should have done at the first of the shows, please rate and review. Thank you for listening. And I hope you guys enjoy it. Please email us, roleplaygeeks@roleplaygeeks.com, and send us topic suggestions or just ideas for the show, or just say howdy. We'd love it. So,
or go on and on about how much you love Jim.
Right. If that feels so inclined.
He's your favorite roleplay geek.
And that's an undead wrap, everybody. See you next week.
That's all we have for this week. Thanks for spending time with us. Please leave a review and comments wherever you listen. It helps others find the show. If you have topic suggestions or would like to get in touch, you can reach us at roleplaygeeks@roleplaygeeks.com. Head on over to the website for an archive of all our previous shows, as well as links to all our social media channels. Thanks again, and we'll catch you next week.